Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
And I'm Scott Warr, and back joining us again is Adam Kimble. He's one of our frequent guests that comes on. He's kind of our philosophical leader. He comes on and we do book reviews and we talk about philosophical things, that how running is a mind game and how we can play that better. So Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. I just went on LinkedIn and updated my profile to say philosophical leader, so I appreciate that.
Hey, you get some extra looks because of that. This is a fun one because, or at least I thought it would be a fun episode. In the book that we reviewed with Adam Kimble, and we did, I can't remember how many episodes we did. I think maybe 3 episodes, maybe 4. 3 episodes, Adam. We did 3 episodes on this book, "The Obstacle is the Way" by Ryan Holiday. But in that book, I was rereading it for the 3rd time because I just think the stuff in there is so good. There's a story about how NASA trained astronauts to stay calm. They literally trained the panic out of them. And I went, man, that is so deep. That is such a good thing. And it wasn't about mastering all the procedures. It was about creating so much familiarity with the unknown that it stopped. Sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. It wasn't just about mastering procedures. It was about creating so much familiarity with the unknown that it stopped feeling unknown. Today, we're going to explore how trail runners can apply the same Stoic principle to their own pursuits. So regardless of whether you have a big adventure coming up, this episode will show you how to mentally and physically prepare so that you can have the confidence that replaces the chaos. So, Don, go ahead.
I will say, guys, I was excited for this episode, especially because even though we've already recorded 3 episodes, since we first read this book and kind of started doing the book reviews, this may have been one of the first books that we actually reviewed. But in the last couple of years, the person and the idea or philosophy that I have shared the most about with other runners is Ryan Holiday and the Stoic philosophy. And so that's what this book is about. Ryan Holiday covers a lot of Stoicism and all the things that he does. But I just think that it applies to ultra running as good as any ideology that exists.
So I'm going to throw this question out for both you, Adam, and for Don, just to get the conversation started. Why is panic the real enemy on the trail? Or how can panic be the real enemy in an adventure or a race or a big endurance event?
Boy, let me lead with that, Adam, because I only have one thing that came to mind, and I better use it just in case you say it. You can't make good decisions when you have panic and chaos going on in the mind. You can't sort things out. You can't think them through. And in the time of crisis, boy, you've got to be at your best. And certainly when we get long miles in, we decrease our reasoning skills and our IQ. Everything decreases to about our shoe size. So if you add chaos and if you add panic to that, then there's no way you're going to come up with a great solution.
100%. In fact, that leads perfectly into what I was going to say. And I wrote down 2 quotes from the book that I wanted to chat about at some point during this episode. And I'm going to give one of them to you right now. And that quote is, "Perception precedes action. Right action follows the right perspective." So when you panic on the trail, it's going to create action that is not favorable and set off a chain of events that you can't control. Whereas if you are able to stay calm in the moment, then generally good things are going to happen after that point.
And it's not just about putting together a plan to say, okay, if I have blisters, this is what I'm going to do. If I have stomach issues, this is what I'm going to do. NASA could have trained their astronauts that way, but instead they took it to the next level and they actually trained those situations into their psyche so that they wouldn't get panicked. And I think, I don't know if it was Apollo 13 or one of those movies, or maybe it was a documentary I saw, that the astronauts have heart rate monitors and all these biometric sensors on them when they're in training and when they go up in space. And when they're doing these training things, when there's something catastrophically happen, they notice because they were so trained to stay calm, that their heart rates wouldn't increase hardly that much. They stayed at the same heart rate, even though something was catastrophically happening to the situation in real life or in training.
Yeah, as I was going back through this chapter again, I don't know if you guys had this thought at all, but I couldn't stop thinking about when they were talking about how the mental side of it and the ability to remain calm was as important as the skills required for these astronauts. I couldn't help but imagine what it was like being the team or whoever it was selecting these astronauts to go into space, and how they were measuring all of that. Like, I would have loved to have seen what the pool was, who would have technically been the most skilled, and whether those were the people that ended up on the mission or whether it was the people that had less skills but just were calm under pressure.
Right.
Well, this conversation brought a flashback into my mind of back when I was in Little League and playing ball and a ground ball coming at me. If I panicked and I lost confidence, there's a good chance that ball was going to come up, bounce up, and hit me in the head, get under my glove. Something was going to happen. And Adam, you're a big baseball player and Division I ball and did that stuff. So maybe you can relate to being calm in the moment at bat or a ball.
Guys, I've always said this. And in fact, I've said this on the show before. I really feel like baseball, the mentality required for baseball is very, very similar to what's required of an endurance athlete, in that you have to have a short-term memory, good or bad. If something happens, you just got to put it on your mind, because that's very much true, Don, where if you start overthinking things, then you're going to be making mistakes all over the place. Whereas you just sort of have to trust your instincts and then, take appropriate action and just move forward instead of thinking about everything and getting caught up in that.
So before we start getting into how we can apply this, I'm thinking back. I volunteered at a couple races this year at the Canyons and then also at Western States. And if you volunteered at an aid station, especially one that's deeper into the miles, you've probably witnessed what I witnessed, and I'm recalling right now, where a runner will come in that is maybe not as experienced and something's going wrong, and they're freaking out. They're going, I can't eat. I don't know what to do. I can't eat, or I can't keep anything down, or I have these cramps, these muscle cramps, and they're panicked. And you juxtapose that with someone that has done this over and over and over again, and they come in and they are just calm. They go, you know what? You say, hey, how's it going? And they go, well, I've been having some issues. I can't keep food down, but I know that if I slow down and I trickle in some food here and there, things will be okay. And it's just fun to see the juxtaposition of someone that is panicking because they haven't either prepared or have the experience versus the person that either has prepared themselves well and has the experience. And I guess my question is does it just come from experience, or can we actually quick charge this? I don't have to have 10 or a dozen 100 milers under my belt before I can get the panic out. Is there a way to train this out of us?
I think it's a mindset, and I think you can prepare yourself for that. I think about your aid station story, Scott, and the veteran coming through, the veteran saying, I'm not eating anything. I know I need to eat, so I'm going to take this with me and eat this as I go. They're not going to panic about not eating. They're going to say, I'm not eating. I've got to eat, or I can't keep anything down. Obviously, my body is not happy right now. My gut needs to be purged and changed and reset. I'm going to step over by this bush, and I'm going to get rid of it. And then I'm going to get back on track. This is the confidence. This isn't going to take me out. It's just an obstacle. Get through it and move on. I go.
Yeah, my answer, I think it's some of both. I think you can do everything in your power to be as prepared as possible. But I also am of the belief that experience can trump almost anything else. So having not done it doesn't necessarily put you at a disadvantage, but having done it puts you at an advantage, no question about it. And I think the more that you put yourself in those situations, the more you can simulate it, go through it. And sometimes for me, a lot of times when I'm working with athletes, they'll ask me, hey, I'm training for this 100-mile race. Do I need to run a 50-mile or 100K race before that? My answer is always, no, you don't need to. But if you want to work on things ahead of the big one, it's a great opportunity to do so. I think that's what running B and C races are for, is the dry run, the run through, allowing you to prepare yourself for the one that is most important to you. And so while you can totally do the A race without any lead up and stick the landing and deal with all the obstacles, I think that has happened a lot and totally can happen. I also think that experiencing it ahead of time will prepare you better and give you more opportunities to sort through those issues.
So the new runner coming into the aid station where things are broken will think, I'm done. This race is over. I just gotta figure a way to cut my band and get hair lifted out of here. Or the veteran runner saying, I'm in a low spot right now. It's going to last for a period of time. I know it's maybe going to be a mile or 4 miles, but I'm going to get through this and I'll be back on top. I need to be patient. I've got to look at my spreadsheet numbers that I have and realize that, some of that's blown and I'm going to miss some of those marks, but I'm not going to miss the race. I'm just going to work through it and continue on.
Our brains overreact. They overreact to unfamiliar situations. So if you've never been out running and had your stomach turn and thrown up as you're running down the trail, if you've never had that happen and it happens for the first time, your brain can overreact. Because it's not normal. I guess the key thing to know is you're not in danger. It's overreacting. It's saying, hey, you need to stop doing this. You need to sit on the trail. You need to quit the race or whatever. But you need to know that that's the brain overreacting because it hasn't had this situation before, and that you're not in danger.
One thing that really struck a chord with me on that note, Scott, was Ryan Holiday said something to the effect of, a lot of times overreactions can be something that we do because it's easier to just overreact than it is to problem solve. You can just get emotional and say, I can't handle this, instead of actually taking the actions to improve the situation and move forward. And I'd never really thought about it that way before.
Hey, Scott, the attorney team that listens live during the recording of the episode.
I knew you were going to bring this up. So yes, please.
They came in and said, sometimes you need to listen to the body and you are in danger and you just need to make a sound assessment. I told them that I would mention it to you while we were recording. And so they've released the issue. Not a problem. We can keep it in, Ryan.
I lost my forearm. It got a compound fracture. But Trail Runner Nation said, I'm not in any danger. Just keep going.
Listen to the body, just not too much,
Right.
So I think that that by putting ourselves in situations where we can gain familiarity with common things that can happen. I think that I'm not saying that you should put sandpaper in your shoe so that you have blisters or anything like that. But I think that the more you go out and you train, some of these things will happen and learn from them. I think that confidence comes through experiences.
Hey, Adam, I'm going to throw that at you. This was some lore that I heard early on, that there were some very accomplished runners that practiced this. They'd put a rock in their shoe and they'd run with it so they could toughen themselves up and be ready for whatever happened to them. And I thought early on, since this source seemed to be pretty credible and they were faster than I am and they have more belt buckles than I'll ever dream of having, it must be right.
You just got pranked, Freeman.
Adam, am I right to lose that as a strategy for becoming a tough ultra runner?
I would lose that strategy, Don. I think I've always thought that the best way to go about these things, and we've talked about this on different episodes before, but just generally picking your spots. I think in general, you can think, how do I become more mentally tough, or how do I handle adverse conditions better? And the tendency can be to think, always be putting yourself in situations where you can work on that. But there's also a willpower effect there, where if you're just like, banging your head into the wall too many times, you can start to get overwhelmed with that or not be as ready to problem solve. So I like to do things like that every so often to hone the skill, to work on it without overloading myself. And I found that doing that, I think, is a lot more effective than just trying to, throw rocks in your shoes and intentionally hurt yourself whenever you can.
Yeah, I think what separates the veteran from the person that's soon to become a veteran is learning to recognize those problems early on. There's usually a small clue that comes in, and if you listen to it, you can catch it and divert it, not experience it. But if you miss those small clues, another one will come. It'll be a little bit larger, and it keeps getting larger until it puts you on that rock that Scott was talking about. You get plenty of clues before things happen to you. Someone that says, I don't know, it just happened. No, you missed about 10 clues before that just happened. If a rock fell on you and trapped you, that just happened. But these cramping, this thirst, this not enough calories, this pace is too, that didn't happen.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I want to say a quick comment, and then I have a question for Adam. And we've talked about this, I'm sure, on a previous episode. But I remember, I don't know if it was you, Don, or if it was Jeff. It may have been Jeff, one of our running buddies, and he would inevitably get a small pebble in his shoe. He didn't proactively put a pebble in his shoe, but he said he actually would have fun with that, and he'd play around with it as he's running. He'd kind of move it around with his toes and get familiar with it. And I think the old saying, at least my memory, if I remember right, said, I even gave it a name. I gave it a pet name. It was my pet, and that was my partner as I ran the 6 miles to the next aid station. Did you say that?
That wasn't me, Scott. I wouldn't have done that.
You would have taken it out of your shoe?
Yeah.
You ever heard that, Adam?
Well, so I was actually gonna take a tangent here and just tell you guys, I can never,
sure.
because we've recorded so many episodes, I can never remember what I've said on each episode. But during the 2018 Western States, which was the first time I ran the race, so I've run the race twice. I've come over the escarpment. So for those that don't know, the escarpment is basically the race starts with a 3-mile climb to the highest point on the course, and then you kind of go over the other end and then into the wilderness and begin your descent into Auburn from there. And so both of the times that I've run the race, I've come over the escarpment in second place the first time, and then in first place the second time. And not intentionally, just was prepared to, because a lot of, like, the thought is you've gone out too hard, right? But I was prepared for both of those situations. But anyway, the first time I come over, and this is 2018, and I'm running in second place through mile 6 or 7, something like that. And who comes up right behind me? Jim Walmsley. And Jim's a friend of mine, and we're chatting for a second. Then he said something like, yeah, I've got like a little pebble in my shoe. I'm not sure if I should like mess with it yet. It's pretty early, And I was like, Jim, take the pebble out and then go win this race. And then he pulled off to the side, took the pebble out, went and set the course record. And so I always joke that I'm claiming like 100% of Jim's win from 2018.
It would have, if he wouldn't have done that, it would have taken him out, right?
And it's one of those things. I mean, to this point, I think sometimes you can overanalyze, should I do this? Is this that big of a problem? Should I address it? And you have to Don's point, I think you have to know yourself and to know the signals, right? And sometimes you can run with a pebble in your shoe for 10 miles or to the next aid station. It won't cause a problem. Sometimes it's going to cause a blister, and that's going to derail you. You have to know generally how you respond to these things and take the best course of action.
Adam, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I want to know if you can give a story or an example of how you train the panic out of yourself as an athlete.
Yeah, I think for me, I can't think of like a specific moment where I've tried to train the panic out, so to speak, but I'll give you an example. So at the Badwater 135, which today is a month since I finished the race, we talked about this race during our last episode together.
Yeah.
Early on in the race, I was having some issues that I wouldn't normally have. My feet were bothering me a little bit, which normally doesn't happen in races this long. And I was probably 10 miles in, and I already had to do a shoe change. And I remember my brain, and I've run a lot, you guys know I've run a lot of these races just like you have, and my brain's instant reaction was to go to, this shouldn't be happening this soon in the race. This is a problem. What's going on? Starting to feel the emotion of it. And what I did in that moment was I said, listen, you've done this a lot of times. There's different things that are going to happen. Sometimes it's at mile 80. Sometimes it's at mile 5. There's different things that are going to happen. You just need to respond to it and keep putting one foot in front of the other. So don't get all flustered about how early in the race it happened. Do what you would do at mile 80, problem solve, and keep moving forward. And then by mile 15, 20, I had forgotten about it, and it didn't cause a problem again the rest of the race.
Boy, to Ryan Holiday's title, "The Obstacle is the Way." That obstacle what allowed you to finish that event strong and healthy and without a big problem. It was that moment, that obstacle cleared out, then opened up the rest of your race, because who knows, you made some adjustments. That obstacle was part of your overall strategy.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was just saying how impressed I am by that story, because if you're having foot trouble that early in the race, you could easily say, it's not my day. Let's pack it up, fellas. Let's pack it up, crew. We're not. But you didn't do that. You said, you know what? If this would have happened at mile 80, it's almost expected. So it's not that big of a deal. I love that you didn't panic and put yourself in a bad spot. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over my years of running long races and being in this sport is sometimes you have to give things time to resolve themselves. You have to take action, but then you have to give it time, So for example, you're behind on calories, you're feeling super depleted. Okay, well now you need to get more nutrition in, right? So get the nutrition in, but don't immediately say, well, I still feel dead, the legs are gone. Give it a little bit of time to see, once that nutrition's in, is it going to take effect and help you resurrect a little bit. So again, it's the emotion side of it. I think the emotions are going to happen. You just have to recognize that you have to let it settle, let the dust settle, take your actions, and then see what happens after that and continue moving forward.
Eureka!
Scott, we better describe what that is. And since you found it, and since you have launched it on your own accord, you really didn't get a whole vote from the team here. Ryan didn't even was consulted. What is that, and why do we have it?
So this sound effect,
Eureka!
I have added to our soundboard because I've been threatening to do something that could recognize gold nuggets in an episode. We've talked about gold nuggets, and these gold nuggets are judged by really only one person, and that's me, because I'm the only one that has that button on the soundboard. But so every time that I think there's a golden nugget, or it's a golden nugget for me, you will hear that sound effect. But I want to say how brilliant that is, that it's not only putting it in perspective, but giving it some time. And I'm going to, you made the perfect analogy, or the running example, but let's bring that into our lives. If something uncomfortable is happening in your life, don't panic, find a solution, and then give it some time to resolve itself. We're in this I need it now immediacy, Uber Eats. I need it now. I can look at Google and ask them who played John Travolta, or who played, whatever. It's all this information is immediate. I think it's brilliant what you said, Adam, that we need to give it some time. Give the fix some time.
My goodness, Scott, I think you set it up. That eureka sound effect has a high bar at this point. I mean,
I'm not going to overdo it, Don. Maybe I will.
Ryan can always edit it out. But I was thinking back as Adam was telling his story about Angeles Crest and about mile 18, in that range. All of a sudden, I started getting these cramps in my legs. I don't get cramps at mile 18. I mean, my training runs were 3 times that long. What am I doing with this cramp at this point? But it forced me on that day, based on the body I was in, the elevation we may have been at the moment, the amount of sleep that I had. What are all the other conditions that I didn't have control of? Maybe it's just all the hormones and chemicals that are released for race day, I started cramping. And so I had to, at that point, that obstacle was, here's a little hint, slow down. Because right now, you're not going to finish this entire race. Your central governor said, I'm taking over here, and I'm going to shut you down in any way I can. It looks to me like a cramp is something you might listen to. And so that was an obstacle that was my way to the finish line.
I love that. And what that made me think of was, and I'm curious to hear if you guys do this as well, but we've talked about this idea before of it never gets easier. You just get better at dealing with it, right? So all the experiences that you have prepare you better for the next one. But I'm curious if you guys do this, because this is something I actively do in races all the time. If I'm in a tough spot and something is going awry, there's so many times when my mind will go to a previous race that I've run where something different and often worse was happening. And I'll say to myself, you made it through that. This isn't that. This is easier than that. And it really helps me. I'm like, yeah, like in my head then I'm like, yeah, you're right. This is not as bad as that. This is fine. Keep moving,
Yeah, I think for me, I'll jump in there, Scott, that I imagine things in my mind, kind of some rehearsal that what could happen. The things that I imagine in my mind are so severe that whatever's happening to me will never hit that mark. I remember going into Marine Corps boot camp and saying to myself, I imagine I will be in icy water with the chain pulling some kind of boat craft, and I'm trying to swim and survive doing this. Nothing I did at boot camp was like that. So I thought, I haven't done that yet. I haven't reached that point, so I can do this, because in my mind's eye, I pulled that boat, that barge in that icy water with a heavy chain. I did that in my mind. So the other stuff that happened to me on a race day, that's not as bad.
So sometimes when we're panicking, we our minds make up things that are possibly worse than what they really are or will be, right? I think that's important to know. I was thinking, for those that maybe that don't have the experience, and not to plug Trail Triage, which unfortunately we've decided that we're gonna sunset Trail Triage, but having that a tool like that where you've gone to some mentors and written out, these are the things that can go wrong. These are the symptoms that you can maybe see or feel or help identify those, pre-identify before they become big problems. And then here are some possible solutions, and have that available so that you don't panic and so that you don't start making things up. Because, I'm thinking of times where I've had cramps, big leg cramps, and I start making things up. I go, oh, I can't even move. I have to stop and I have to lean up against a tree and it hurts. And I just think there's no way I'm going to finish this. And by the time I get back to my car, I'm probably going to have these legs amputated, and then I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. And, you just start making things up. Whereas if you have a plan to say, okay, cramps, these are some of the things that you can feel or notice that will help identify those. And then here are some solutions, and then trust that plan. I think that helps with the panic as well.
And Trail Triage is an app that you can get on Google Play Store and the Apple Tunes Store, whatever that is, and download it. And you can, if it's going to go away, screenshot some of that stuff, because it has been qualified information. Bob Crowley and folks helped
John Anderson.
And Dr. Anderson, who is an accomplished ultra runner and emergency room physician. There are very qualified answers on there. So get it, grab it, screenshot it, and keep it for reference, because that stuff's valuable.
We may still have some of that information available on our website, but the app's probably going to be sunsetted.
Well, that's a good idea, Scott. I'm glad I thought of that. Putting it on the website.
Great idea, Don.
Thank you.
Eureka!
Scott somehow managed to get a eureka for his own idea.
I was gonna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Don.
It's one eureka for Adam, one eureka for Scott, and 0 for me. Brian, in case we're keeping score.
I gave you the Eureka, Don. I gave that to you.
For all of you with your Eureka scoreboard at home, that's the official count.
Do you have something to say,
I was just
Adam?
going to follow up on what you said, Scott, with how your mind can just start kind of going from one thing to the next when you're in panic mode. And that was going to lead me to the second quote that I wanted to share in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And it's from, the quote is from a man named Miyamoto Musashi. And he was like, I think they said he was a 16th century warrior. And there's like folklore of him being in battles where his opponent had weapons and he didn't, and he would still defeat them, kind of thing. But the quote is, "The perceiving eye is weak, the observing eye is strong." And so it's one thing to observe a situation and say, this is what is happening and this is how I need to move forward. It's another way to perceive, I'm hurt, I'm struggling, I'm in pain, all these different things, and then let that drive your decision making, because that's where we can run into issues.
One of my favorite sayings, I've said it 1,000 times on this podcast, I'm sure, if you're the only one thinking you should go ahead and stop running as you move into the aid station, you're probably okay. If people aren't coming up to you and say, Adam, my goodness, sit down, we're going to get some medical attention from you. If you're not getting that, because that's what you feel, you probably don't need it.
Yeah, and
outside observation, observation that's factually based. Yeah, good point, Don.
Great point. And another distinction that Ryan Holiday makes in this chapter is, he said, I forget the exact example, but I'll tailor it to what I'm going to say. You come into an aid station and you're struggling and in pain, and you might say, I'm hurting and this is bad. That's not one thought. That's two things. You can be hurting, and then there's different ways that you can problem solve that. The bad part is you assigning the emotion to it. So you hurting is not inherently bad. You're just hurting. It could be from running for 50 miles. It could be from a lot of downhill, pounding your quads, whatever it may be. And there are actions you can take to make that better. The bad part is you assigning that feeling to the situation.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah.
Coming into Michigan Bluff, mile 55, hot day. It is Western States. And Kevin Sawchuk is the medical advisor there. And I'm thinking, I've got to come up with a good story for Dr. Sawchuk. And I said, I'm tired. And he goes, yeah, it's mile 55. You just climbed a 3-mile hill. It's hot. Of course you're tired. So, I mean, what I was conjuring up in my mind as the perfect reason, I've lost motivation. I can't run right now. Fine, don't run. Walk until you're ready to run, but don't drop here. I thought, okay, there's no excuse I can come up with this guy.
That's a perfect example, Don, of why, at real quick, Scott, at all of the races that I run, my wife, Karen, is always my crew chief, but she is never the person that is communicating race things to me. That's always someone else on my team, usually my friend Josh. And the reason why is that I am more emotional with my wife because she's my wife. And so if something's going really bad, I might tell her, and her reaction might be, yeah, you're right. Let's pull you from this race. But my friend Josh would never say that. So he's the one that will give me the Kevin Sawchuk answer of, you're fine, man. Get back on the trail.
So one of the things that I have written down here is that we need to build our emotional muscles. Build our emotional muscles, just like we're building our legs and our lungs and our VO2 max. Our minds adapt to stress. So what are some things that we can do that we can gradually build our emotional muscle? What are some things or situations that we can do that can expose ourselves to stressful situations? And those stressful situations may be different for each of us. You may be stressed about running at night. And if you go for these longer races, you're probably going to need a headlamp. And if that stresses you out, that's going to be an emotional take an emotional toll on you. So what are some ways, Coach Kimble, that you help your athletes build their emotional muscles?
I'll give you one easy, tangible example. And I actually think I pulled this years ago from Dean Karnazes. I don't know if it was in a book or an interview or something that he did, but he at one point said that he would run at all different times of the day to just mentally strengthen himself to do that, you know, because a lot of us get comfortable with our routine. And so you might be a morning runner, you always run at 6 a.m. You might be a evening runner, you always run after work. If you're one of those people, try doing the other one. And just mixing that in every so often. First of all, you might find out that you actually like something else better than what you've been doing. But at the very least, it's just going to be enough discomfort that it gets you used to, you know, I don't really like setting the alarm. But one day every 2 weeks, I'm going to do it and get out for an early run. And those kind of just little habits can build the right sort of muscles, mental muscles that you need to flex when you get into situations where it can be tough.
And I'm going to ask Don this because, you know, it's one of his favorite topics currently, because he has this new cold plunge at his house. Is that something, Don, that you use to help build your emotional muscle? Or is it just because you like cold? I know it's because you hate cold. I know you hate cold.
I spent my whole life trying to avoid cold, and all of a sudden, why do I have this cold plunge? But it is the total exercise of being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I just love that settling in, and my mantra: "It's only cold, and that's okay." Yeah, it is cold, and I'm
You're
okay
not
with
in
that.
danger. You're not in danger.
Yeah, this brings up a great point, Don. I'm really glad that you said that. Another I think really key point here is one of the big reasons, whether we know it or not, everyone has different motivations, but one of the big reasons that we run the races that we run and do the expeditions that we do is because there's a great sense of accomplishment when you do hard things. And I think the same can be said of little things in everyday life. It's not comfortable to hop into a cold plunge for a few minutes, but when you come out of it, you might have a euphoric feeling and feel, wow, that was amazing. I do hot yoga once or twice a week, and when I'm in there, it feels miserable a lot of the time. But then I get out and I feel incredible. You know, it's both. It can be like a physiological response, but there's also a mental and emotional response to doing hard things and feeling better about it. And I think we can't underscore how important that can be too.
You know, I remember, Adam, the first time I went into a hot yoga studio, I panicked. I mean, the humidity in that room and the temperature, I don't know what it was. It could have been 150 degrees in that hot yoga, or maybe it could have been 250 degrees. But I panicked. I was just thinking, I can't breathe. I can't get enough air in my lungs. And I think that's a really great way that you can maybe help train some panic out. And I have not yet been invited. I'm joking, Don. I've been invited to the cold plunge. I haven't yet taken them up on that, but every run that we go on, inevitably we talk about cold plunge.
Well, that's one of my topics right now that I like to talk about.
Yeah.
But Scott, I love the term emotional muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of ways to train that. One might be a cold plunge. One might be just rehearsing things that can go wrong and thinking of solutions, putting yourself there physically in your mind's eye. It gives some familiarity. You know, you can imagine things. It's almost like you're there. Dreams certainly feel like you're there, and they're all in your mind. So I think emotional muscle. And to that point of, well, how do you train for that? And you asked that a bit ago. And it brings back the old saying, train like you're going to race. If you're going to run through the desert in the sand, then you got to do some desert sand running. If you're going to do a lot of elevation, you need to do some vertical challenges to get prepared for that. Find out wherever you're going, what's the biggest obstacle in that race? How can I reproduce it here so that I'm familiar and comfortable with it? And I overcome it on my own terms.
So as you're talking about that, Don, back when I was in high school, I used to be a ski racer, if you don't know, and I wasn't very good. And in fact, my sophomore year, I think every single race that I raced, I DQ'd, which means I didn't finish. I should say DQ'd, I DNF'd. I would crash and burn, and I wouldn't finish the race. And it was really starting to bother me. And I think it was based a lot on nerves and panic and emotion. And we had a sports psychiatrist that came to our team one time and taught us some simple visualization things. It wasn't, you may even say it was self-hypnosis. And I started doing that at night, where I would kind of, lay down and go into a very, do some breathing and get into this focused mental state where I wasn't thinking about anything. And I would picture myself in the starting gate and be very specific about how things felt. How do my feet feel underneath? How do my skis feel? How do my arms feel? What's my breathing like? And then I would visualize taking off down this course, and what are my legs doing? What muscles are flexing? And it really helped. So even though I wasn't specific in the training, I was doing some visualization in my mind and going through scenarios. So similar to, but unlike the NASA astronauts, they were actually training and doing things and not visualizing it. But I think that our brains are pretty powerful things that maybe if we visualize things. So take this to trail running. Let's say that you're at night you go into a mental state and you focus and visualize on a downhill course that don't have a lot of experience on, and you think, okay, what are my legs going to feel like? What are my feet going to feel like? If it's a hot course, how does heat feel? How much do I sweat? And you can kind of, do some visualization. And I think the mind's pretty powerful. Sometimes it doesn't know whether it's real or not. I think that's a great way to train your emotional muscle.
So, Adam, you might be asking yourself, that sounds good, Scott, but was it effective? I mean, and if you're not thinking that, everybody else is. And I'll tell you then, he went from a DNFer to having himself on a billboard in Utah of him actually on skis going off some kind of mogul, like Killian went off that rock in that Unbreakable video.
Well, first of all,
it works. It works.
First of all, completely different scenarios. The billboard was not me racing; it was me going off a cliff kind of thing, and it was not racing. But I will say it did help. My junior and senior year, although I still was not a very good racer, I had more finishes than I did I don't think I finished a race my sophomore year.
I love that.
So it was helpful.
I love that. And I 100% agree with the visualization side of it, Scott. In fact, one of the things that I do with all of my athletes that I coach when they're preparing for a race is we do at least one, usually a couple, but at least one, what I call visualization runs. And it's just a run where it's like a 2 or 3 weeks out from the race, and I have them just go out on a couple hour run, whatever it may be. And I want them, I basically tell them, I want you in your head the whole time, thinking about the race, visualizing what this is going to feel like, how you're going to feel like when the wheels maybe start to fall off, what you're going to do then to start problem solving that, and just to kind of work through the motions. And even though it's never going to be what it is on the day that you actually do it, I 100% agree that thinking through those things can give you a little bit of the like mental gymnastics required to then deal with it when the actual situation arrives.
Boy, I like that, Adam. So as they're working through this visualization, it's not just all running on a cloud at your best pace and everything's going right. You're actually working through some of the trouble. This is a cramp that comes along. What does that feel like? What did it feel like early? When did I start ignoring the symptoms, and then what happened? So you're kind of mentally working through all the things that can go wrong.
And then also just sort of like mentally practicing when that goes wrong, how am I going to respond to it, and getting yourself into that mental state of whatever comes my way, I'm going to take action to try to get over it and through it and continue on.
Yeah, Scott, can I suggest that even though it's not going to help me much because I have 0 eurekas, I think you put a eureka on that for Adam.
Eureka!
That was good. Now I'm further behind, but I'm mentally going to see through it. We'll have to get Adam on again very soon so that I can practice some of my visualizations where all the eurekas just shower down on me, where I start handing them out.
You know what? That was so selfless, Don. You just earned yourself a eureka.
Thank you, sir.
Eureka!
Then we'll do anything not to get invited back, huh? You don't want to come back with this.
Hey, so for another point that I got out of the chapter is to stay present and stay and know your purpose. We've talked about when you go out and do these very hard things that you need to have a why, but part of that is also staying present. And as I was reading about the astronauts, they were trained, they knew what the mission was, and they were trained and prepared with any circumstance that could possibly arise. They stayed calm because they trained for it. So I think that's important too. And I know Don loves talking about staying present and doing his, is it a plane or a car where you have all these dials and you're looking and you're what's happening now, and what does this dial say? What is my respiration, and staying present. I think that is really, really important. I think the astronauts, and I think maybe I need to watch Apollo 13 again. That was a really good movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but they had some serious issues. And anytime that the panic started, the captain, who was Tom Hanks, I don't know if he's a captain, I don't know what he was, but he would remind them, we have a mission here. We need to solve this, and the mission has not changed. We still have a purpose here. And regardless of the circumstances we're in, the mission has not changed. So when you're out on an adventure, or you're doing a race and your stomach goes south, or you have cramps or whatever, it's a situation. The mission hasn't changed. The mission is, I'm going from point A to point B, or I'm doing this loop, or whatever the adventure is. Stay focused on the mission or the why.
So as you were telling that, Scott, it made me think that we do, and through this whole conversation, that emotions sometimes get in our way of making a good decision, that it clouds our judgment, that our IQ drops significantly, where we can't, come up with the right answer. And so I thought, one of the things that I've done, and you guys certainly too, have removed yourself from the situation, become a consultant for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Remove yourself from all the emotion, listen, sort out all the problems as if someone was explaining to you what's going on, and how would you advise them? And that's because you wouldn't think about, my foot hurts, my stomach hurts, I just don't have my legs feel like cement. All of that stuff is going to be disregarded by the consultant there. And they're going to say, here's what you need to do. Number one, you need to slow down for the next half hour. That's mandatory. You need to start dumping in as many fluids as you're comfortable with. You've got to make sure your electrolytes are right. Are you hungry? You've got to give yourself self-encouragement and quit beating yourself down. Beat yourself down for X period of time, but then you're done with it. Now it's a new discussion that you're having with yourself. So removing yourself emotionally and objectively looking at it, and get rid of the subjective feelings part of it, I think is a good takeaway.
Just want to add one thing on top of that. So earlier today, because it was a month since the race, I made a post about on social media about finishing Badwater, and in there I said something to the effect of, everything in life is a team game, and the sooner you realize that, the sooner you're going to crush your goals. And so to this point, I think it's important to
Eureka!
I think it's important to surround yourself with the right people that can help you grow in these areas. And I'll just give you a quick example. So back when I used to live in the suburbs of Chicago and I worked for a company in Chicago, we were an event company, and we put on sometimes really huge events all over the US. And if you've ever worked in event planning, you know that a million things can go wrong at any point, and it can go off the rails. And so what I learned working at that company is that the best possible thing is to be with a team of people that don't panic when things go off the rails. They say, okay, we've got a huge problem. We just had a looper license for this event. It got revoked. Now we need to figure out how we can get it back. so that the people at this festival can have beer, you know? And I think just being around people that don't panic, don't freak out, and say, okay, now let's take steps to solve this. I think when you surround yourself with people like that, whether it's your crew at a race, whether it's your training partner on a training run, that starts to ingrain those ideas into you, and it makes them second nature, so that you then sort of absorb those feelings and those behaviors yourself.
Hey, Adam, answer this if you can, or willing to. What about during a race? Do you end up within earshot of for discussion, someone with negative energy just throwing all kinds of stuff out that you feel is, a burden and not an
Yeah, that's when you throw in a race fartlek, Don, and you surge as quickly as that person as you possibly can.
You don't push them off. You don't push them off the trail, Don. You
pick your spot well. You've got to look and see where that next turn is. So there's got to be a point where you can go. I can hold this for 30 seconds, but I'm not going to pick a spot where I've got to run strong.
That's also might be the time where the next aid station you hit, you're going to make your quickest aid station transition of the entire race.
And all joking aside, what a great life lesson too. If you're around people that are negative, that's not good. Get rid of them. Take a fartlek run and move away from them. One of the things I think, I can't remember, Don, you brought it up in your last comment, but Adam, you talked about it, and I think that it's worth restating that panic is a choice. Adam, you gave us the analogy that what was it, that something's going wrong and I'm now mad because of it. The emotion is the choice, and that's Stoicism at its best, which is what this book is based on, is Stoicism. That sometimes we create our own situations, or we're put in situations that we can't control, but the key to this whole thing is how we respond is under our control. So the panic is a choice. If something is going awry, you can choose to panic and to start making excuses or throwing a fit, or you can say, no, I'm gonna work through this situation. And I think just having that knowledge, and the knowledge that you have control, that it is a choice, that there is some freedom of choice there, I think that helps, so we can make a choice. A lot of times people think they don't have a choice, and how they have this emotion come in, and that's just a result of the situation, but it's not. There's a choice there.
Yeah, I think asking yourself, why did this happen to me now? How can I turn this into something good? What message was being sent to me? This didn't happen to you, it happened for you. So turn that experience into a for you.
So I'm sure.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but I do some motivational speaking. And just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the Boys and Girls Club of North Lake Tahoe. I think it was 4th and 5th graders. And one of the things a lot of times that I'll talk about is the why me syndrome, right? So when I think about the hardest things I've ever done, or the accomplishments I'm most proud of, at some point during all of those, I was having why is this happening to me? Why am I feeling so terribly? Why is this not going the way I wanted it to go? And I've realized in all of those situations, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to process through it, but I've just realized that it's all about you deciding that it's a why me moment, as opposed to it being a why me moment. It's the decision of you to say, this is happening to me, instead of this is happening now, what do I do to improve the situation?
And if you pull up and speak to some ultra runner, and you ask, tell me a story about some run that you were in. Give me an example of some of your history. They will most likely find a situation they had to work out of that looked dire, that it wasn't, I was running so well, it was the best day ever, you should see me finishing, it was my personal best. Nope. The story that you usually hear is their personal best time they dug themselves out of a situation.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of reconcile this, I think, at times, because we all prefer it to be the successful route, but I think all of us can agree that a lot of times we learn and grow the most from the things that go the worst. And you don't want it to go the worst every time, obviously, but I do think there's like some phrase about the setback is the setup for the comeback or something along those lines, where a lot of times I've experienced those, the race didn't go the way I wanted it to go. It was a disappointment in my eyes. But then whatever it was about that race that didn't go well taught me a very important lesson that I'm taking into the next one, and often leads to greater success at the next one. And so it's all part of the journey, the ups and downs. The reason we sign up for these things is because they're not easy. And if things do go off the rails, like, yeah, that was going to happen, So now how do you handle it? How do you deal with it?
Very interesting, Adam. As a community, and I'm not just talking the trail running community, but as humanity community, we choose to share the lessons, the hard-learned lessons, and we're compelled to share those for the safety of the entire group. Like, this happened to me. I walked by this place and a tiger jumped out. I mean, that's important to share, not necessarily that the flowers were great and the sun was and wind was at my back. Okay, well, that's nice, but I want to pass on information about that's where the tiger lives, and that's what we're compelled to share that.
And I will say, as you're talking, Adam, I'm equating this. The reason I brought this whole book up and this topic up for us to talk about is I've dealt with a very difficult situation in my career, and even though it was not fun and difficult, I found myself searching for solutions to fix the situation. And so I was reaching out. I read 2 books, trying to figure out a solution to this problem or this situation. And then I reverted back to the obstacle is the way. And that's how this whole came about and you're absolutely right. If this situation didn't exist and things were flowers and unicorns all the time, I wouldn't have reached out to these other 2 books and back to the obstacle is the way, because there was no need to. There was no stress or situation that would have necessitated learning and growth. And so even though it sucked, there was learning and growth, or at least I hope so. At least I hope I learned and grew.
Yeah, I think I've, again, maybe something that I've said in the past on one of our episodes, but the thing, every now and then someone will ask me it's one of those like, what's your favorite movie? Well, I could answer this in a million different ways. Like, I might have one movie that I consider the best than all the rest, but like, there's comedies and there's dramas. There's a lot of nuance to this, right? But sometimes someone will ask me like, what has running taught you more than anything else? And I think the best answer to it is I've learned so much more about myself and how I respond to difficult situations. I think just the other day, somebody asked me, so I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, and somebody asked me what have you learned the most about yourself as a father? And my answer is they have pushed me in ways that have made me address my weaknesses. I used to think I was a patient person, and then now I have 2 young kids, and I realized I'm not as patient as I thought I was. And it's one of those things where I think ultra running has unlocked areas of my life that I very likely would not have addressed otherwise, and it's made me a better person through the struggle, and that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah, I've said in the past, if you really want to know what you're made of, who you really are, if you want to be introduced to you, go out and do something hard, because you will be introduced to that person.
Yeah.
If you're a quitter, you're going to quit. If you're a winner, you're going to persevere. You're going to find out who you are if you do something hard. And sometimes in life, people never reach out to do that hard thing. They're careful. They don't want to take the risk, so they don't. But the people that do get to meet themselves. And most of the time, I've got to think, because we keep signing up for these things, we're happy with who we are inside.
Yeah, and isn't it? I think one of the biggest travesties in a human life, is not discovering who you really are and how you deal with things. And if you never push yourself in different ways, you might not really find out how you respond to things and how you work through issues and become better. And so I think for whatever it is, there's going to be people listening to this that will never run a 100-mile race, and that's great. You don't need to, but there's things you can do in your life to really get to the heart of who you are and how you handle things.
In other words,
a 10-mile race can be hard.
100%.
Somebody could do that.
Doesn't even have to be a race, right?
Yeah. In other words, Adam, you're telling me the obstacle is the way? Is that what you're trying to say?
Cut it right there. That's the end of the episode.
That was a wrap.
I need a mic drop. I need a mic drop button.
Before we go, Scott, we got to talk about signing up stuff. Adam's doing something very, very important.
The California Biodiversity Project, which we teased at the very beginning of this episode. Adam, tell us about the California Biodiversity Project by adventure scientists, and why are you even involved in this?
Yeah, so I sort of stumbled into this opportunity, but it's so amazing. This guy who is the head of a group called the Adventure Scientists, he reached out to me, told me about this project they have going on. The bare bones of it is we're collecting soil samples on trails all throughout California, sending those in, and then there's going to be scientists studying the samples in a lab and using the information that they gather to determine how they're going to divert resources in the next decade to, especially the next 5 years. I think 2030 is kind of the target, and how they're going to, what things they're going to prioritize as far as the biodiversity of the state. So it's basically going out on trail runs, collecting dirt samples that are going to help the health of the trails that you love to run on. So super, super cool opportunity. It may extend beyond this. It for sure goes through the end of August. So we're getting closer to the end. But if you're listening to this right now and it's a week from the end of August, you can still get your supplies, go collect a couple samples and send them in. So anything helps, even one time is helpful. And anybody that's running in California on the trails can get involved. So please come join the team. I would love it.
So where do they go?
They will go to a link set up I'll give to you, and it'll be in the show notes. And that link will go directly to my team, which is a team of trail runners. They've kind of separated into trail runners, mountain bikers, and I think hikers are the three groups, kind of doing like a little bit of a challenge. And so you'll join my team. There's a quick 20-30 minute online sort of run through of them showing how to collect the samples. It's very quick. And then they'll send you the supplies. And then you just head out and start collecting samples.
And I will say it is very easy to register. I did the first step and went and registered. And then there's a little short training video. That is where I got stuck. And when I say stuck, lazy is probably a better. I still need to do the training, but I'm committed. Adam, to get the training done and get my supplies and do some soil sampling.
I appreciate it, Scott.
Also, you can find Adam at adamkimble.com. He mentioned, we mentioned his title is coach. He does some coaching, and he also mentioned he does some motivational speaking. And it's obvious that you want him as your motivational speaker if you're looking for
I just wanted to plug this real quick because I thought it was awesome. So I had to let you guys know this. I should have told you sooner, but it just happened yesterday. I just had a video call with a woman named Laura who's been listening to Trail Runner Nation for a long time. And she's thinking about starting her own, or actually she's going to become a running coach and do her own thing. But what was super cool was that she told me she wanted to just like talk about some things. And she told me she was listening to an episode that I was on with you guys. And at the end, I said, please reach out. And she was like, I didn't know if he actually wanted people to reach out, but I figured why not? So she reached out. We set up a call all because of Trail Runner Nation. So if somebody's thinking about reaching out to me for any number of reasons, please do like Laura did and actually reach out.
Adam is not an avatar. He's a real person. Hey, whatever you do, train the panic out of your system, check your emotions, and go out and run.
Mas.